or are you?
No, I'm on my phone, but it's coming up with it is recording though. So
Yeah,
it's just you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you come up with a weird name. It's like guest 1,000,000 4.23 blah, blah blah something like that.
Yeah. That's me.
Either way, okay, live from Panama, and I guess last week's episode was just the tale, wasn't it? So we should
Yeah.
probably say, I should say to the listeners, some people may have been a little, what's the word, surprised by the level of debauchery that was discussed on that episode, which isn't for all. The aim is not to, tell tales for the sake of telling tales, but, it's an honest podcast. I think that's the core of everything. If people were just honest with one another, then people wouldn't get so scattered out by certain things. I think, the reality is if most people I was going to say if most people had certain things on a plate, very few would turn away. That's what I'll leave at.
Yeah.
And I was talking about, I wasn't talking about food or substance, but more, 9s out of 10s. Anyway, so before that, we were going to discuss Jonestown, which we did. It's just that there was a hiccup with the recording, which hopefully won't happen again today. My ear is the culprit. So what was the topic, James?
So I mean, I feel like learning something today, and my voice isn't 100%. As you can hear, I'm a little bit sniffly, I'm a little bit bunged up. I don't mind doing less talking and more listening, and I often do a lot of listening. But there are aspects to Jonestown and how that links in with other events across the world that you're going to enlighten us on.
Oh shit, am I?
You kind of mentioned it earlier, so
I did allude to it.
I'm gonna fucking call you up on your bullshit now.
Oh no! I'm gonna I've got to open up the files. But firstly, we need to discuss Jonestown because, I mean, for the listeners, it wasn't really discussed at all. So I guess we'll have to run over at least the numerology and the kind of overview. So if you take it away, James, see what you remember there.
Yeah. What I remember is November the 18th, 1978.
Yeah.
918 people. Which is like 3 times 306. Allegedly died in a mass suicide. There was a cult leader called Jim Jones who amazingly managed to, have his own autonomous region in Guyana. It was Guyana, right?
Guyana, yeah.
And like even that in itself is like, quite bizarre. The amount of money he amassed up until the point of this massacre was $26 million, which is absolutely bizarre. 909. When did the 909 come in?
No, it was 909. Yeah, 909, 906, 909. So there was an air crash. Sorry, there wasn't an air crash. We've been hearing too much about planes recently. There was an escape attempt, and if you deduct the number of people, I believe, that were died outside of the kind of main complex, there's another number which is what comes up on Wiki as well. But I watched a documentary recently on that kind of escape attempt.
Yep. Also, in terms of the numbers, there was like a nursery facility, I remember, that was, on like the compounds of this cult ground that had exactly 33 children in the nursery.
There were, weren't there? Oh my God.
Which is just like ridiculous. I mean, all of the hallmarks are there, and there's literally almost no exception. Every mass event that happens in popular culture has this intertwined in. And funnily enough, last night, before I'm I'm just gonna have like it's a slight digression, but it's kind of on topic in regards to numerology. There was a really interesting video that you can watch on YouTube, and it's called The Psychology of Numbers, and the channel is called Eternalized. Um, and I recommend that, any of our viewers who, I mean, a lot of them probably do know about numerology, but this takes a deeper dive into numerology and the psychology and the philosophy and the science and how essentially, our reality is formed around them. And the video is 53 minutes, 36 seconds long as well.
Of course it is.
Amazingly. And I'm pretty sure that that was deliberate, but maybe, with like a sense of humor given the topic. But yeah, yes.
But there's also the other angle of when these things do happen in what would be a kind of what would seemingly be an intentional capacity, it may well be quite the contrary, at least as far as the intent isn't within our realm. Because, we stumble across 33s all the time. There's so many messages that we leave or phone calls that we have. Or when I look at my watch, it's 33. Even after I think, set the Skype thing, I had 33% battery on my phone. And then I flicked through couch surfing. And the two first people I pulled up that are attending one of the events I posted were 33 and 30, and I could have picked anyone, and there were literally hundreds of people over the events that I posted. So it's stuff like that you think, okay, well, we're kind of tuned into the ether in a way that we can't
Yeah.
comprehend. I mean, like the video you sent me yesterday with people's hair flying through, it was kind of upended in spikes and spits because of the kind of cataclysmic vortex of electricity that's funneling through our atmosphere at all times, and we're kind of tuning into quite literally. These things for sure may happen with respect to certain podcasts, certain topics, because it's all aligned.
I mean, when I say absolutely, I mean absolutely. It's funny you talk about electricity running through people's bodies. I just got goosebumps going through me. When you were talking about that, the time was exactly 22:44 in the UK, which is 66. But I didn't want to interrupt because you were in a flow, but I was itching to let you know. And once again, it just shows you that these things are intertwined, with our very existence. Hence the video that I'm imploring you guys to watch. It truly is fascinating, and no doubt, the powers that be, they know how to harness it. They probably use these things as a ritualistic purpose to it. But all of those things, will be uncovered as time goes on. One more thing in regards to the numerology of Jonestown. Exactly 1/3 of the victims, should be 303, were minors. So,
Yeah, no, that was another fact. And it was also 6,000 miles away, because they have to throw that in there as well, of course. And there's some other numerology and some other interesting stuff. I was just thinking the guy's middle name was Jim Warren Jones. Warren is obviously whole, and Jimmy in Cockney slang means piss. So his name translates. And of course, I'm sure one could manipulate the etymology to suit any kind of notion, but his name translates to piss hole. Which it's probably all set up. I've come to conclude that, even when things are, can be proven to be chance, let's say, there's probably intent behind it nonetheless. It was just chance that they didn't actually have to put the effort into creating the intent because it was there on the plate. But it would have been initiated had that person not had that coincidental name of Warren and Jim. Either way, I guess the extent of this is, I guess, just to elaborate further, it's not a particularly vast topic as a singular. Well, it is, but we're not going to discuss it because you don't have the depth. But we're trying to branch it into other kind of similar instances. But there's a lot of suspicious things. So obviously, the overview is Jim Jones was this cult leader who apparently, as a kid, classic story, he was a disturbed mind. He didn't quite know where he should fit into, and all of a sudden, he started following the communists. Of course, that keyword. There's always communism somewhere lurking in American history. And then from communism, he branched out into the ideas that everyone should essentially, follow God in the purest way possible. And that somehow, all of a sudden, led the man at a middle-aged life to decide to connect with the Guyanese president, who coincidentally happened to be the first Asian elected president outside of Asia. And it gets really suspicious. The chap himself is riddled with numerology because the massacre of the so-called 918 persons occurred on November 18th. Well, it just so happened that the president's birthday was, I believe, on November 18th. I hope I'm not messing that up now. You might need to cross-check that, James.
I certainly will.
It would be a bit coincidence if it was on the same day, but there is some numerology there. Maybe it was born November. That would be the same thing, sorry. But there's something November 18th, I'm sure.
Let's see, I think it could have been November the 3rd.
But anyway...
What was his name like?
It was something Asian-y, because he's an Asian chap that attended the bar in London and was a part of one of the most prestigious fraternal clubhouses. He was also born in a place called Windsor Fields in Guyana itself. All of these names are, of course, occultists, and they have all kinds of meanings that people like Silas might be able to comprehend, or many other YouTube channels like Decoding Our Reality. So in essence, this man, Jim Jones, when he was in the States, developed connections with influential congressmen and senators, which is rather strange for a so-called communist at a period when so-called communism was opposed to capitalism in the United States. And of course, it was all one entity, as we know, as our listeners might most likely know. It's all just one controlled operation. And then, of course, he ends up getting how much money in funding in 1970? Well, it would have been before 1978. The massacre happened in 78. But
$26 million.
$26 million this man ended up with. $26 million in between, I'm assuming, the late 60s and the early 70s, because this was when the complex was developed and the cult was developed. And that's a hell of a lot of money even today. But back in that period of time, that's far, far more considerable. And again, why does a man have so many connections with the US Senate and US Congress when he was a self-proclaimed communist at a time when you had the kind of open quelling of anyone that resembled a socialist? And then, of course, he ends up getting connections. The whole story is ridiculous. When you actually listen to yourself, saying it, the idea that a man that's a communist who happened to know senators and congressmen gets $26 million, flies out to Guyana, befriends the president. He's then given a settlement of land on the border with Venezuela, a disputed region, where he develops a cult, where he's completely immune to US foreign policy and the diplomatic scene, and even the national government itself, and then develops this gathering of individuals some of whom are completely dedicated to him. We're told only to then end up in a mass suicide where 918 people were killed, 3 of whom were children, 33% were children, whatever it is. 33 children, died. Was that the case? 33 children?
No,
what was it?
33 children could fit in the nursery.
33 children could fit in the nursery. 303 died. 918 total. Exactly. If you separate the massacre at the airstrip, it was 909. Then you've got the president and there's something to do with the president, which is November 18th as well.
Will tell you, and it was Chung, Arthur Raymond Chung. Arthur Raymond.
Arthur Raven, yeah, interesting name as well.
So he was born in 1980.
1918, that's what it is.
But he died on the 23rd of June, which is 6/6, 23, 2 times 3, June, 6th month. So, once again, it's almost every single time there'll either be a cusp or like the 33s and the 60s. I mean, it's just like, almost every time. And sometimes it might be organic, but I think a lot of the time these things almost done like ritualistically.
Completely. But it's funny to think, isn't it, just briefly, like again, because we were just talking about this, me and James were just having a debate. When you think of really what reality is, can we prove most of what we believe to be truth? So this is something that's so easily that can be so easily manipulated that can make a child's mind that's malleable, or an adult's mind believe what is in essence just words scripted in what's deemed historical narrative, supplanted in our libraries and our schools. And these people are telling us that there was a massacre in 1978. And of course, there's sprinkle a load of witnesses in there, maybe 20, 30 family members who would come out and they'll say, oh God, yeah, my mother or my grandfather died in this massacre, blah, blah, blah. But who's to say that ever happened? Who's to say that ever happened? And this precedes the internet, this precedes mobile phones, this precedes at least accessible travel for most. And these people were situated in one of the most rural parts of the world. And who's to say this ever happened at all? And
no,
no.
I was just about to compound what you were saying, but do continue.
No, one more thing I was thinking. Now, let's say these things do happen, because realistically, people have no value to these kinds of occultists, these Satanists, these ritualistic do-gooders. The ones in the higher echelons. They for sure do kill people all the time. That is a truth. We can all agree with that. However, when it comes down to the leadership, I always find it funny, and not to say they don't pop off some of their own from time to time, but the idea that, oh God, yes, so the 918 souls all ended their lives, and then Mr. Jim Jones as well followed suit. I think he shot himself in the head, supposedly, which is always that seems to be the story. But as we know from recent times, basic things like, and which could also be false as well. I mean, I'm thinking of what's his name, McAfee, John McAfee, who supposedly, and this could also just be fake because again we're hearing about it, tweeted or whatever. Oh, if I end up hanging myself Epstein style in jail, I want you to know I was healthy or whatever. And then of course the guy ends up apparently killing himself by the exact same method, which of course never happened. Probably because the guy was never in jail in the first place. Probably because there was no John McAfee. Just like the chap that's always been in the news recently that we discussed when it first came to fruition, because we've never heard of this man. And what was that bold English guy that's got loads of supercars and apparently the son of a billionaire? And he's utilized as the kind of conservative chap, the kind of misogynist.
Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate. The man's not real. The man is not real. Andrew Tate is not real. And he's exactly the same in his formula to a guy that was missing in Afghanistan recently. Well, myself and my Japanese friend were there. And the man isn't real either. It's completely fake. It's just a complete psyop. The guy doesn't exist. You can even go through his history, his public history, and it's just not the same individual. I can't remember what the name of the guy is, but he might still be missing now, supposedly. It's a British YouTuber who made a couple of 100,000 followers, I think, across all platforms. And
you're talking about Max Spears.
Not Max Spears, but Max Spears is also a shill and an open shill, because he used to apparently bunk with Orlando Bloom. They were bed buddies at college. I just find it funny how all these people seem to know each other. What a coincidence! And what a coincidence he was in, bunking up with an actor, a public actor at least. But this is another thing about Hollywood. It's not the true talent that makes it to screen. Why would you, if you had a talented school of actors, actresses, musicians, why would you give the public taste for the better? You would leave the real good stuff, the real gem, the truffles of the plate to be utilized for kind of side operations, for kind of secret underground formulas that end up turning into realities, kind of Truman's Show style. So we know when we see a movie, we're told, well, it's fake, it's there for pleasure, something like Pirates of the Caribbean or any of the Marvel comics that have been made into shitty films. Those are kind of atypical actors, to amuse the public, a bit like jesters in a castle, at the feet of the king or the emperor. But those with the real talent are the people that end up in positions where they're regarded as kind of truth dwellers. Those that are actually the ones with presidential titles, titles of monarchs, Secret Service agents, educators, people that have, and I say in inverted commas, real jobs. But these people are all actors as well. They're just on the next level. They're actually the A-listers. People in fucking Hollywood that you see on the screens, they're the B-listers. They're the C-listers. They're literally living the lie. And then you take people like, I wouldn't say he's the highest level, but what's that guy's name? The Alex Jones. I can't believe people think he's real. People actually think this guy's. People are like,
Oh,
it's
God.
crazy, isn't it? That's for me. That's like the ultimate actor. The guy is just so openly. You should be on a stage in the West End. It's just so ludicrous. You can see him there with
That's how,
a wand or something and some kind of depiction of Hook or Alice in Wonderland. He could certainly be a character with a podgy chap with a jester's hat at the bar drinking purple shandies. It really is scary. So going back to Jonestown, I guess what additions? Where are we going to go with it? Because I guess the idea is to highlight. There was one thing that could be compared, I guess, to Jonestown in a similar part of the world, which we did touch on, which is, I guess, the textbook topic for every social anthropologist, every anthropology student or sociology student, which is kind of the Napoleon Chagnon, who was an anthropologist back in the 60s. Well, he came to fruition in the 60s when him and his team were responsible for the deaths of thousands of, I think you pronounce the name Yanomama or Yamanama, something like that. That's pronounced incorrectly, but essentially a tribe in the Amazon. It's all nonsense, of course, as well. The funding came from the Atomic Energy Association or something like that in the United States. The conspiracy being that they wanted to know what it would be like if a society was collapsed and decimated following a nuclear cataclysm. Whether one believes in nuclear weapons or not is really aside from the point. The idea of like ultimate warfare is something that has happened already and therefore is an absolute. So I guess the study of how a society would rupture and splinter and try to redevelop under this strain of losing a vast proportion of its population would be a genuine interest. The question is, would the public gain light on this? But it actually gets deeper than that, and that's how you know many of these things are truth, whether or not the truth is absolute. His team member, who I have an entire folder on, and he still is a New Jersey professor today, took one of those Amazonian girls. She was apparently 12 years old, but she could have been much younger. 9 to 12 is the estimate. He took her back after his anthropological field study and took her back to the United States, impregnated her and married her. And not only that, everyone was fine with it. He ended up becoming a university professor, and I believe he still teaches today, or it was until very recently. So imagine working with a man who's an open pedophile, and back in the 1960s, 70s, he was essentially impregnating children. He was married to a child legally in the United States because he married her legally in a part of the world where it was legal to do so, in the Amazon rainforest. Imagine working with a man. Do you know, it's amazing to me that man, I think of the people that are, his first name's Tim, I think, I can't remember his last name, but think how many people you have to meet every day as a university professor, aside from the students who are enrolled in your class, who have opted, usually if you're, shortlisting colleges in the US, you have an idea of who's going to be teaching you. And it's one of the first things that comes up when you Google his name. So people are aware that this man had done this. The finance department, the staff all around him, everyone in the department. You go to the lecturer's hall and you have your coffee and you have your mints and whatever, and you're conversing with a fucking pedophile, and you're totally fine with that. How insane is that? Because they're all complicit. All of these people are complicit. All of them are. In one way or the other, they're all involved.
I mean,
isn't it
I
saying?
could potentially argue against that and say people sometimes have such fucking tunnel vision. It's like they don't look outside the box. So some people, like, people that are edified, they're edified sometimes just by the textbook, and they don't look at the world. You have all of these people that, really, edified in their chosen field, but don't have a clue about what's happening in the real world. And maybe like some things that are really obvious, like, oh, let me Google my lecturer and see, what his background is. I mean, they probably wouldn't even look at his LinkedIn page, let alone, doing like a deeper dive, because, that's an issue that a lot of people have. So I could play, there was everything to say that, like these people may not be. I mean, by their actions, they're complicit. I think their ignorance sometimes makes them complicit more so than a knowing.
Oh no, completely. Completely. Keep going though. Keep going because I'm
Yeah,
looking for this guy's name. I actually have a whole
yeah.
folder on him
Nobody.
on my
Some
Google
more
Drive.
neutronic
But I can't remember.
on Mr. Chung. So, Mr. Chung, born on the 10th of January 1918, 1918. 918 people died in Jonestown. He died at the age of 90 in Georgetown. Um, Obviously, I already said on the 28th of June. And there was a convention centre named after him that was recommissioned in 2018 in June as well, the 6th month. So yeah, some more numerology there. Let's see what
Found the
else we.
guy's name, by the way, just as a kind of. It's Ken Good, Kenneth Good, the
Good.
anthropologist. If people want to look him up, he, according to his Wikipedia profile, he is still an associate professor at New Jersey City University. I have no idea how good that university is. I guess it doesn't really matter. He was born in 1942. And yeah, he married a child. I love how it changes. So he was betrothed to his future wife when she was 9 years old. 9 years old. And I love how they try and manipulate it because I've heard lesser ages than this, but they began living near each other and consummated the marriage. So it's still a pedophile, by the way, under international law, even though they've tried to up push the age by 5 years, which I can promise you is total bollocks. He fucked her, but they don't obviously say that in the Wikipedia article. They use a very polite word, which he's undeserving of, called consummated, when she was 14 years old. So they said she was married to him at 9, and he raped her at 14. So we can say that's 12 maximum, which is more realistic, but probably 9 is 9 when they got together as when
nine is
9.
when he started doing things to
Yeah,
her.
exactly. 9 years
At
old.
the very latest. At
Oh,
the
completely.
latest. Yeah, yeah.
He then traveled back with her to Venezuela, Caracas, a few times before she followed him. I love it. I love the way it's worded. Like he's the victim. Her name Yarima.
Yeah.
Yarima followed Ken to the United States. She didn't follow Ken to the United States. She probably couldn't speak fucking English, and she's never been on a plane in her life. It's fucking insane the way a pedophile is just writing this. So Good himself estimated later that these ages, I can't actually believe he said this. This is what the pedophile said. He said actually the age was closer to 12 and 13 when we were married, and 15 to 16, obviously because he's trying to evade criminal sentencing. 15 to 16, but it was 9. That's everyone says it's 9. It's 9. He's the only person that doesn't say it's 9. Of course. So they went back to the United States. They lived together for several years. He completed his PhD before deciding to return to her tribe. Probably at this point she was too old. That's why he was probably sick at her, because by this point she was about 20. And for pedophiles, 20 years old is just a little bit too much. So they decided to go back. They have 2 sons and a daughter, all of which grew up in the United States. And I mean, he has a right. This is part of the Masonic mockery. This is brilliant, James. Are you going to guess it? This is brilliant. This is brilliant. Now, for our audience, we've already talked about the meaning of names and how they are concoctions. They're artificial. They're supplanted to create humor within a said scenario. So his name is Kenneth Good, and he has a project in the Amazon which has been running all that time called the Good Project.
Of course. I knew. Before you said it, I just knew it was the Good Project. Of course.
The Good Project. The Good Project. And and he's again still that associate professor, and he has a ridiculously small Wikipedia page considering his prominence. But then I'm not surprised, as he's probably banged half of the children in the tribe, and his colleagues, who are all doing exactly the same thing, have probably decided on, let's say, shortening the profile for their own safety, because no doubt if one's doing it, they're all doing it. I mean, how could you work alongside any person? Imagine you're doing an anthropological field survey out in fuck knows where, and your colleague, let's call him Jim Jones,
Yeah.
starts banging 9-year-olds, what do?
I
Beat him up,
would,
kill him, probably
yeah, I
throw him to
would,
the wolves.
I would,
No one's gonna know.
yeah, create a conspiracy. I'd conspire with the fellow archaeologists, anthropologists, whoever's with us, to get rid potentially.
Get rid of him, yeah. Oust him at the
Yeah,
very least. So the
yeah,
fact that all of these people to this day worked alongside him, were fond of him, employed him into a position of authority, even though he married and raped a 9-year-old girl openly and admittedly. He admits that he married her at 12 or 13, which no one else states. Everyone says the marriage is 9, every single witness 9 years old. And that he consummated the marriage at 15 to 16. And that's just to get out of being arrested in the US, of course, because it can't be proven otherwise. And everyone else says it was 12 to 13. Everyone else, meaning the entire field crew and the tribe themselves, said it was 12 to 13. And these people still work alongside this man.
they're
We're
all
talking
complicit.
they're all
They're all
complicit.
complicit.
Hundreds of
Absolutely.
people, all of them, all of these people are part of the system. But this is where it gets scary, because every time we've talked about symbolism before, I guess it's not the episode for symbolism exactly, but most people will be aware of triangles and compasses and all that kind of stuff, and it goes a lot deeper. And if you want to look at deeper, I guess numerology and symbology, always take a glance at other people's channels that certainly cover this kind of topic in depth and to a good standard. And in fact, Silas's recent video is also pretty good on this. But every time I walk down the street now, I glance up and I think to myself, why is it that the average looking car mechanics or average looking mini market that's a little bit above a corner shop but in a good location, why do they always seem to have some sort of symbol reminiscent or aligned to certain occultist formulas? It's not a coincidence that you'll walk down a street and out of 15 shops in a nice part of probably Munich or London or Paris or wherever, you'll see every other store having a triangle, a special triangle.
Yeah.
The horizontal bar taken out of the A, flipped upside down. If you look at cryptocurrency symbols, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Because it's all a scam. And I think we've been told that power is a man in a suit with a cigar, or someone with a pistol, or someone with tattoos. There are degrees of power, but it's always like associated with, I guess, what people used to define as masculinity, like a kind of dominant alpha figure. But actually, I disagree with that completely, because dominant alpha figures generally wouldn't go for these kinds of behaviors. And I'm not saying the people that do are any more alpha. I'm saying it's quite the contrary. The behavior that actually governs this world is not alpha. And people should believe that, because it's an upside down system. It's an upside down system. And that's arguably why the A for alpha is upside down in Masonry often. Because it's a betaized system. That is the course of power for those that govern. It's to replace true power, deserving power, which is gaining a position of authority over your community through your own endeavor and the respect of those around you. Now, you could call it fear, but either way, it's acknowledgement at the very least over the subversive nature of pillage and rape in all formulas, both metaphorically and literally, that are undertaken by those that truly govern. They are the slime. They are those that run the banks. They are the ones that count the money over and over again and polish their coins under their nails. Their nails grow long in the barren wastelands of the underground tunnels that probably descend far, far beyond our comprehension, that are linked up to those like the Paris catacombs and the London Underground and the New York, whatever it's called, subway system, all these underground tunnels. And actually, it's interesting because there's that article you shared with me, or the video you shared with me recently. And of course, we're being realistic. These things could be chance, but it was in a synagogue, wasn't it? And they found a tunnel underneath, going into one of the most prominent synagogues in New York, a deep underground tunnel. And they actually, the police, again, this is probably all for acting, for theatrical purposes for the ignorant public, but there was a bit of a brawl in the synagogue. Things were being thrown around when the police uncovered this tunnel system. But they're everywhere, and they tell us, of course, in film. You take is it not Mila Kunis? It might be Mila Kunis. Who's the one I'm thinking of from Resident Evil? She's got a Russian name.
Yeah,
Is it Mila Kunis? No, I think Mila Kunis was in SWAT, in the movie SWAT. She's more Hispanic, I think. But it begins with M, her name. I can't quite remember. She's of Russian heritage. But there's a movie called Resident Evil, and the movie's called The Hive. And there's pictures of Johnny Depp and his fake spouse.
Mila Jovovich.
That's it, yeah. And the movie depicts these vast underground, whatever you want to call them, complexes, basements, cities. I mean, the world is upside down, and consequently, we are. This is the kind of this is the shit of the world, I guess. Because I
Yeah,
mean, this is another thing. If this is a dome, if this is a giant dome, if you think about what it's like to be in a cave, and there are some caves that are so vast that you can look up, and even with the most powerful flashlight in the world, you can't see the top, right? Well, what if the cave was 20,000 times larger than that, and we were now in a cave? It's a microcosm, it's a microclimate. We have trees, we have all those things. Trees and fish can supplant themselves within the depths of all kinds of cave systems. I mean, a great channel for people to watch is Action Adventure Twins, where they go deep down into kind of unexplored regions of both mines and kind of natural cave systems, which are of course most probably trees in themselves. That's another angle we could take. Their tree roots, and they've been mined over many years, and yeah. But there's no reason why the scale that we possess here in our known world doesn't exist beyond the depths.
so like to add to that, we've got this thing called the sun, which, yeah, probably is not spherical. So yes, we can see visually that it's circular, but being circular and being spherical are two different things. And let's move on to a different kind of topic, but essentially, we never see the dimension of the sun. We cannot see that it's a sphere. We can just see that it's circular. It has some form of circular shape. And let's just say, play devil's advocate and say that it's spherical, which I don't believe it is. When you look at the rays coming down, and if you think about the fact that we are in a domed system, which is objectively true, when you look at the evidence, it would appear that there's a magnifying effect from the way the sun's rays splay when they enter, this environment and spread over, a certain area. So, yeah, in essence, this could literally just be a little ecosystem in a much, grander scheme, which, yeah, once again, I suppose we know is objectively true because you can go, beyond the Americas and there are other spaces out there. But we'll cover that in another episode, most probably, because I think that is yeah. I mean,
I
there's
feel
a lot
like
to be said about that. And
I feel like we should just name our episodes just essentially just random 2.0, or just random 3, random 4, random 5, because it's almost impossible to direct the topic, because we have so many directions we can go, and it is really at essence the philosophy of the universe that it's just impossible, isn't it, to cover a single topic in like an hour. It's just impossible. I think we should just see where every episode goes. We just call it
yeah,
kind of
a
a
single
jumble of.
topic, no, but I suppose we can have like a flagship topic for each episode, and then like because there will be a lot of people that wouldn't have, heard of Jones, and I
Heard of
know
the
a lot of Jones
Jonestown.
don't know who Jim Jones is, and the fact that Guyana has first, president was like a Chinese guy, like all of these things. Or sorry, the first Chinese guy to be given a presidency outside of China. Sorry, was was this guy who ironically was educated in England and was a lawyer beforehand, but um, I managed to jump from being a
Did on his
lawyer and
Wikipedia profile.
and a judge to suddenly, being the president of a country, which is interesting. Yeah, who did he know for that to happen? And I'm
Oh,
sure we could,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure we could do an episode on that in itself. But yeah, I
What's
don't know.
been happening in recent news? I was just thinking, what's topical at the moment?
Recent news is
Oh, the Iranian scenario. Yeah.
and the Yemen scenario and this alleged, airstrike, and who it was actually aimed at, and there's all kinds of nonsense and
Can
tomfoolery
I
going on.
can I digress a second to something completely random?
Of course, that's in.
Right, so I'm looking out. I'm on the balcony. I got my laptop. I'm looking out on the street. It's not a particularly nice area, but we're on a pretty nice street. The houses are pretty big. I guess it's probably, not an affluent neighborhood, super affluent, but a moneyed neighborhood. I always can't comprehend, and this isn't something just typical to Central America or the Americas in general, with the exception of Canada and certain parts of the US. But people that just throw their fucking trash outside their fucking house onto the street, or when the bin man comes because they haven't properly put it in the place, trash is just left everywhere. Now, it kind of doesn't matter whose fault it is. Would you want that outside your house? I mean, these people literally spend all day, and I'm talking about Hispanic people in general, they just spend all day doing honestly nothing. It sounds pretty bad, but, it is a lot of emphasis in Latin culture for talking and socializing, having coffee, that kind of stuff. And, that takes priority, which is nice, but it's certainly an unbalanced scenario to have. I think Germany and Scandinavia is probably quite the contrary, and that's also unhealthy. A middle ground's fine. I think we've talked about that before, but there's so many reasons why it's good to clean up trash outside your house. Number one, it's your fucking house. Number two, you're devaluing your house and the street by having all this trash outside, literally. Number three, you've got kids. Come out the door, they're going to see fucking trash everywhere. Number four, the health. Yeah, it attracts rats and cockroaches and all this stuff. It's a literal liability for your own health. Number five, because of all these things happening simultaneously, it attracts less desirable people to move into the neighborhood because they think you're an easy target. Oh, there's trash in the neighborhood, no one cares. They have less inkling to perhaps look after the security and stuff like that. If they're not focusing on, the presentation, then it might be an easy way, to rob something like that. So it's just, there's so many things that make no sense about not clearing trash up outside your own property. If I saw a glass bottle outside of my own property, I don't consider myself to be OCD. I would fucking clean it up. I would just, if I walked outside and I was getting in my car and someone dropped a couple of bottles there, I would pick them up and put them in the trash because it undermines where I live. How does someone not have that mentality? What is missing upstairs to not have that? You're literally kicking yourself in the balls because it's actually not affecting anyone else outside of your immediate area. It's literally you and your neighbours, which at the very least is 50% you.
Absolutely.
It's just ridiculous.
It just goes on me. I don't know. I recycle everything. I put everything in the bin. It's like leaving things outside. But if the bin outside is full, or hold back on putting things outside. You don't want it overflowing, and then foxes can get to it. It's just fucking common sense. But yeah, some people don't have it. We had this situation last year where people were putting general refuse in the recycling bin, and obviously then the council weren't taking it away, and it's just like you said, just fucking kicking yourself in the bollocks. Now they're not taking away the rubbish. Now you've got a fucking problem. Yeah, it's beyond me. And like you said, the mentality is just logic. And these are adults, because anybody who owns their own apartment is an adult, and the lack of basic logic that some adults don't apply to their existence is fascinating and flabbergasted.
Yeah, it's true. And most people aren't adults, are they? Which we've learned in the last couple of years. People are, carried along through life by the state. And it's that kind of lack of care, that lack of willpower, which is, I guess, why they're willing to leave their trash outside the house and jab at their kids and jab themselves and, feed their kids 3-liter bottles of Sprite and Coca-Cola.
Absolutely.
And I don't think it's a lack of knowledge. It's just there's no care. There's no energy there. They're basically walking robots. And I saw it for the first time, actually, when I arrived yesterday in this country. And I'm not saying it's just this country. I'm just using this as an example for a lot of society globally. The thing you see in London, which I haven't seen in such a long time, which is the kind of commuter walk where everyone is just walking in robots like drones,
Yeah.
Do you know that walk? It's scary. It's like a dystopian kind of scenario. Well, this morning in Panama City at one of the main train stations, I saw the same thing and was reminiscing about London and, not just London, but that kind of European way of, not just European, I guess that, well, it may be European, but it's in North America, that kind of, that drive to, what's the word I'm looking for? This is, I guess, quite an important origin of behavior.
Is it
It's
like
the desire
that kind
to
of
fit in?
Yeah.
It's the desire to be a part of something, and it doesn't matter how good that something is. The something is more important than the cause. It's the taking part that counts, not the winning, which I always laughed at when I was a kid, because everyone obviously wants to win the race. But actually, most people were shit at sports anyway, and yet, they would pick the fat kid to do the fucking 100-meter sprint or the high jump just because it's someone to do it. And I guess that kid would be happy to take part. And, it's a fine line. And I think we talked about it before. It's a fine line between saying, okay, so do the high jump. It doesn't matter if you win. It's the taking part that counts. Kill someone. I was going to say kill a Jew, but that's too typical. That's very Holocaust. Not for YouTube did I mean that. I mean as an example of, things that are being utilized by the Nazi party or whatever. But, it's something that, you could easily see people doing, just like what happened in what people call the Holocaust in 1944, 1945, these kinds of scenarios, or the Russian Gulag system. You had these examples where you would say to people, kill the gypsy or kill the Jew or the Christian or whomever it is, and people would just do it. People would just do it in the same way you tell people clean the street up, and they'd do it if there's an authority behind them. But if it's just their own house, instead of, pissing out in the toilet, they piss on their own back wall and they leave the trash outside because no one's telling them not to do it. And that's very childlike mentality, isn't it? Which brings us back to, I guess, the original form. It's like people aren't willing to actually do something unless they're being dragged along by the neck and on a dog collar. And that's, I think, a completely lost society. And that is the system that is trying to replace the kind of old school system of individuality where you had to take a hearth to the lounge, so you have a hearth in a lounge and take a match to it and light your own dinner, and you had to feed your family by culling animals and farming and foraging and all that stuff. You relied on things instead of just ordering Uber Eats or Deliveroo or walking around the corner to a corner shop and, oh, they're out of water, it's okay, I'll just feed my kids Sprite and Coca-Cola because it looks the same, it's liquid, you shake it sounds the same. Honestly, the amount of people that I don't think have ever drunk water is probably an understatement and underget. I reckon like most people have never had a bottle of water in their lives. Like every time I see someone in Central America, they're in the shop getting a soda. I don't think I've ever seen someone pick water up here. I've occasionally seen someone with like a 5 litre, which they probably use for cooking, not for drinking, but they drink the Coca-Cola. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's the Coca-Cola
cook with the Coke. Cocaina. Oh God.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So any more topics? I guess we briefly covered the Jonestown. I say covered, we barely scratched the surface.
I don't. I mean, sure. I suppose maybe should we save the Congo for number 17?
Congo's a beast. Like Congo's going to require like 18, 19, 20. It's the origin of the world. We've got to build up to the Congo. Congo's got to be like an episode 50, assuming the world is still here. But we'll come up with a topic. I'm sure something will happen. Iran will be bombed by next week, and there'll be a fresh set of discussions. But I think we should keep turning around to how to initiate a alternative life and how to kind of get out of it. We should always sprinkle some of that good fairy dust in there, which isn't fairy dust. It's real dust that anyone can attain. So, yeah, I guess we'll see what comes.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, and also maybe the whole self-interest philosophical topic.
Oh yeah.
I think that is worth approaching soon. I mean, we've done 48 minutes, 50 minutes or so, I think. So
that's a solid. That's like what I was going to say something derogatory then, but that's what a lazy person would say for the whole day. Oh mate, I've done about 40 minutes today. That's all right, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm English, mate, and that's how we that's how we work.
100%, 100%. All right, man. Well, I guess we'll call it for next week or this week or whenever episode. So wait, what was this then? Because the other one was 16.5. Should we call this just 17 then? And next week will be 18 again.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. 16. Yeah. Okay. Are you sure this isn't 16? Is this
No, I
the?
think the other one was supposed to be 16.5. I think.
Oh, because I thought 15 was the one that got kind of accidentally.
No. I think that
Bought.
15 was already up.
Oh,
So,
that was
maybe you're right. I need to check that. Either way, it's something, and it will be a whole round number again, just to
yes.
lessen the confusion.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, cool. All right, everyone, good luck and enjoy the week, and hope you're digging your holes, your bunkers, and filling that with all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, we will surprise you with something. All right, man. All the best.
Adios.
Au revoir.